Well, what have I got myself into now? So this bike had a backwards, upside down shot of it on Facebook Marketplace for $30 for a project bike. And it kind of looked like it had some cool silver Shimano cranks. And I couldn't really tell what else was going on. So for $30, I had to go look. I was hoping it'd be some Dior stuff maybe, or something. It's not, unfortunately. But I really got myself into something here. So we're going to pull this thing apart and check it out and see what is going on. So this was clearly someone's project. It was clearly their nightmare, and I'll show you why in a second. I'll show you some ridiculous stuff about this bike. And the guy bought it from said that he actually found it in the dumpster of his apartment building. Someone was definitely frustrated with it, threw it away. But it doesn't look totally mangled. Looks like it was someone's project. They were trying to do some stuff with it, but couldn't really figure it out. So the first thing I see that tells me it was someone's nightmare is this homemade seat binder bolt, which at first I thought maybe this was a stolen tweaker project. But I'm just thinking they were just trying and didn't realize bike shops existed. It doesn't have a chain. Derailleurs are hooked up and seem to be working. So maybe they're original. Cranks seem pretty cool and original. They have alloy rings. They're bio-paste, unfortunately. Someone put some flat pedals on that are halfway decent at one point. It's got cool Tongay chromo double-butted MTB tube sticker. It is a Novara. I thought it was 80s, but maybe they didn't start making these until the 90s. I like it. Novara Aspen Tongay tubed for REI. It's really cool logos. Sadly, the front brakes are missing all their hardware, but they're not valuable brakes, and I bet I can find some in a junk stash around town. It does have some other amateur stuff like mismatched V-brake levers for their old cannies, so wouldn't have worked at all. The first thing I noticed about this bike, other than the missing brakes, was that the quick release was just sitting on there. So I went to flip it, front wheel just fell out. There's no lawyer lips. It's got Araya rims, like a Joytech front hub, and Araya rim to like a Suzu rear hub. But unfortunately, there are mismatched rims and mismatched hubs. I did try and turn the handlebars to get it into the car, but as you can see, the stem bolt just went up and up and up and up, and there's no rocks or anything around to try and knock it down with. So I'll have to see if the stem is frozen or it can come out. And it's up really, really, really high, way past the max line. So I'll have to make sure that it didn't blow out or damage the fork, which is something people do. The seat tube is very thin, and this is very thin, so this might take a real seat post size. I mean, this might be a halfway decent frame. It's got nice, big, wide dimples for fat tires down here. It has mid-fork mounts and eyelets, rack mounts and eyelets. So, you know, it's a cool commuter bike. Put a front rack or basket, fenders. It's pretty small. I haven't measured it yet. But some cruiser bars with this stock stem, or probably a longer road stem. Might even use these shifters. They're old Shimano, like nothing fancies, but they work. You know, unless I find some real cool shifters. Might even use these stock derailleurs. They're the light action ones. They're nothing fancy, but I've used these on lots of bikes, and they actually work pretty awesome and shift great. So we'll see what's savable. Bottom bracket feels crunchy. We'll see if it's just too tight or if it's totally destroyed and savable. Yeah, we'll pull it apart and see what happens. First thing I'm going to do is pop these wheels back off. We'll give them a closer look later and see if they're worth saving. Kind of thinking no. I mean, the rim's pretty good on this front. Hub's pretty smooth. This front might be worth saving, even though it's like a cheap mountain bike wheel no one will care about. Now the real question is, will this stem wedge knocked down and let the stem move, or is it frozen and are we totally boned? Hey, that knocked down. Hey, and it moves. Still tight and weird, but we might be in all right shape. Let's free ourselves of all these old cables. This old housing is like the translucent round stuff. It might be all original. God, I think this is original Diacomp cable. Yeah, this one too, original Diacomp cables. That's really cool. I get a box, save some of this old stuff, like this little top hat, which is goes into the cable stop on the front and is worth its weight in gold. So don't throw something like that away. But the shift cable heads aren't frozen in the shifters, so that's a great sign. These grips are lock-on. Lock-on grips are rusting these old chrome riser bars. They're only whatever, I don't think I'm going to care. I'll definitely put some sweepy back bars on. Someone put a screw in this brake lever. Not very bike mechanic-y, not very pro. Will I keep this lever? The spring seems to be working. Looks a little big and weird. And the screw is goofy. I think I'll just save the barrel adjuster. This other lever is super cheapo, junk, whatever. This is gonna get tossed as well. I save these weird cheapo Shimano shifters because they're probably fine. Shimano EM. They're not all mangled or chewed up from the bike upside down. Chrome's not all rusty. Why not use these or sell them to somebody for 10 bucks? A million times better than those crappy Sunlight knockoffs of these that explode if you try and put them on anything. Can't handle any cable tension at all. Yeah, same as this one too. It's got a little white paint on it that's going to come right off a little thumbnail action. Not chewed up. These look fantastic. See if we can get this the rest of the way out. It's like it wants to do stuff. You can feel rust and crust falling out of the bottom of this fork as I try and wiggle this. Just sort of lifting up and wiggling. It's definitely moving now. It's a plunger style. Those are, I feel like those more often get stuck. Pop the bolt out, if we can. Sink it back in, see if I can get it threaded into that plunger. Pull this plunger up. An old trick for frozen wedges and plungers is to get a bunch of old kickstand base plates, a little top plate. You can stack those up under this bolt so you can tighten it down and squish them all together, and it pushes against the headset and can suck the plunger up without too much problems. Won't damage anything, so I'll soften alloy. So yeah, plunger came right out. It was just pretty rusty and crusty, but I think it'll clean right up, no problems. Yeah, this old steel riser bar has some big dents and some issues, so it's going in the recycling. I got lots of cheap riser bars. They're not worth anything, no reason to save a junk one. But the stem's kind of cool, even though it's cheap and weird. I'm going to feel in here and see if I can just feel any damage other than just all this rust. Maybe. Definitely pull this headset off and see. I'll pull it off to overhaul it anyways. Probably no point in saving these brakes, but I might, just in case I find another set just like them to steal the hardware off of. But the brake themselves is damaged or missing a spring or something. Definitely gonna solve this seat post binder bolt. Literally use anything else in the entire world ever. Looks like it was made for like a double flat-sided old style quick release. So I'll probably Put a nice big M6 in with a nut. Doesn't look cracked or damaged, it's nice and big. Other side's nice and big. Yeah, not an approved binder bolt. But I did get a free 3/8 Husky 1/4 inch drive socket. Free tools. Okay. The brakes come off nice. This little spring is just being a little bit of a pain, but no problem. That is something to check for on mountain bikes especially. Is people like to destroy old candy posts, running into stuff, wrecking their bikes, crashing, riding the brakes all loose. And it's frame building, brazing, and paint. If those things are dead. If they're only a little mangled, you can take a file and clean them up, clean off the burrs and make them round again, and they're all right. I've definitely seen broken ones. Sometimes we'll break them right off and just use a real long bolt. That's like a fix, and that's fine if that's how you want to live your life, but not on my bike. Maybe on this bike we could do my derailleur hanger alignment trick. For old cheap derailleurs, you don't really need the fancy alignment tool. You just sort of eyeball the jockey wheels in line with the cassette and chain. Take your tool if you're going to pull the derailleur off and grab it, just bend up, bend forward or back, whatever, and align that derailleur pretty close. For old friction stuff, it's no problem. For modern indexy stuff, you'll never eyeball it close enough. Yeah, the pulleys are fine. This derailleur's fine. Exciting removing of water bottle cages. Wouldn't think this would be exciting, but these bolts are frozen. It gets real exciting real fast. These do look like weird rib nut bottle cages, so that's interesting. Loosening all the clamp bolts and pinch bolts and all the hardware just to get all the parts out of the way. These cranks and rings are nice too. If this fork's not mangled, we'll be in good shape. So I'm going to take these pedals off without opening an artery. You can see how indexing and notchy these cranks are. The bottom bracket's probably toast, but in worst case we can measure it, measure the overall length and the jet, and probably find a sealed cartridge and switch it out. I haven't done a video on how to pick and install a sealed cartridge yet, so that's cool. Being careful and pulling away so I don't drag my knuckles across the chainring like I did 2 days ago. A different bike. Like a genius. I'm just doing this quick and dirty for like a little montage. I got lots of other videos about how to do it correctly. His teeth aren't even worn. This bike's probably pretty low miles. I mean, the paint's in such good shape. Oh, those tapers look brand new. I don't think this bottom bracket's ever been apart. You can see the line in there. Look how deep down that line is. Like halfway down that taper. Well, a third anyways. Yeah, look at the shifting. Like, it's had a chain on it, but almost never. I love it when cranks are in decent shape and matching. Same length, same serial number, same brand, same blah blah blah. Hate mismatched junk. Oh yeah. This crank's taper looks good too. Threads are great. Pedal threads are great. These cranks are worth the $25 if you ask me. This bottom bracket's kind of cool. It's got a different style cup. Probably just use this adjustable wrench. Don't try this at home. No little internal dust sleeve, so you can see it's full of rust and dust. It's definitely got some Brunel on the bearing tracks. There's a few little spots of indexing, little notching where it's stopping. It's a little dent. Sad baby. I've had problems with this Park tool not being 32 millimeters, being very tight. I just get into the file and just barely clean it up. So we'll have to see if we can get this off without it. Otherwise we're going to have to file it. Oh, and we sure can, so that's great. Sometimes you can't, sometimes you can put a junk wheel in there and really pinch it with your knees. Use some extra leverage. I've definitely destroyed wheels doing that, so I always save an old junk one around for stuff like that. Oh, this has the evil little lock ring. Let's see if we can get it out easily. I do have a couple weird little lock ring tools, I think, for getting these out, but usually really easily just do it with some pliers. Yeah. It's nice big channel locks, a little roundness to them. I got these at Goodwill bins the other day for $2.29 a pound. Got the old dried grease is like wax on sort of going back and forth a little bit to get it out of the thread so it doesn't just all build up and jam and cause a big problem. I do not save these for any reason. They're junk. They cause problems. Throw it away and put a regular headset spacer in. It's already got the little chromed toothed lock ring. Tooth. Doesn't need to. This headset is desperate for an overhaul anyways. So I've discovered a huge problem. So this is the old original fork, which is a totally cool fork with mid-mounts and eyelets and candy bosses, and it's really light. The problem is, remember that tall stem that was in too tall and over-tightened, I had a hard time getting out? So if you look at these threads, bam! You see this? It's all blown out, the threads are spread apart, there's a big giant crack. So that's what happens when you put your quill stem in up too high. Don't stick it down to the minimum and over tighten it. Found the weakest part of the fork, which is where it's filed real thin for the little tooth washer, and it has bulged and blown it out right where the quill plunger was. So the stem was probably never tight and moved, so we constantly tightened it and destroyed it. So this fork is done. My plan is to take it with me to probably Bike Farm, Community Cycling Center, some other little local nonprofits and bike shops have used parts. See if I can find this exact matching fork. Might be hard, but maybe I can find a cool blue one or a chrome one or something that'll look good. I'm gonna do something cool with this frame. Or else I'll the frame if somebody doesn't care and I'll put a yellow fork in and do whatever they want with it. And maybe I'll find a different fork that's similar but different, like one out of a much bigger bike. And I can just chop a few inches off and add a few inches of thread, that'd be fine. If you have a thread tool. Otherwise, a lot of shops charge you like $50 to rethread a fork, or $25 plus $20 an inch or something crazy. I think that's what we used to charge, like $25 an inch, because it's kind of a pain in the butt. And I sold my fork threader, so you can usually find them for like $150 used. So maybe if I need one, I'll buy one, or you can find a real tall fork and cut a bunch and make it 1-inch threadless. Buy 1-inch threadless headset. Usually the threadless steer tubes are not machined out to 22.2. They're actually thicker to be a little tougher, so you can clamp the threadless stem on and clamp and yank on them. But forks do get butted as they go down, so I got a real tall one and cut it off. It's going to be thicker down here anyways. I think it's a little thinner for the quill stem to go in. So you cut all that quill stem off. Should be thicker, should be no problem. You can probably go 1-inch threadless. All you need to do is get a 1-inch threadless headset, switch to a stem, either 1-inch threadless, which are kind of hard to find, or 1-1/8 threadless with a little $5 shim. And you can use any stem in the world. There's a billion 1-1/8 threadless stems everywhere. So we'll go on a little adventure and see what we can see. But it might get put off for a little while because I bought this Trek 520, this 1990 Trek 520. That's real cool, and one I work on. And then I found a frame I've been watching for a while. Like a buddy sold it to somebody else, and the people keep lowering the price, and now it's like $200. I'm thinking about going to pick it up tonight, if I still can. It's got a handmade custom fork with dynamo wiring guides and all the braze-ons. They're powder coated. I think it's like a Bridgestone MB1 or MB2 from like 1994 or so. $200. So I'll probably go pick that up and either put the group off. Like I had that 1990 Dior LX group, I might put that on, or I have a Dior LX group on my my 92, 93 Alumatrack upstairs, a handmade aluminum frame from here in Portland. I don't really care about. It'd be pretty fun to do a frame swap. You can swap all those parts over onto this beautiful orange sparkle powder coated, you know, MB1 with a custom fork. Make that my basket bike. So we'll see. Could be hot and fun. So, old Novara is on hold. There's a big swap meet coming up on the 18th of March here in Portland. So I'll probably bring the Novara down and try and sell it, especially if I can't find a fork. So who knows? So before we go through all the trouble of finding a new fork and finding all the rest of the parts and spend more time on this bike, we're going to make sure that the frame is doing great too. So we already really kind of looked over it, made sure there were no cracks where the top of the seat stay caps are welded on or brazed on. Making sure the bridges don't have any cracks in them. They have to crack there a lot. Making sure these bridges down here, there's no cracks. Making sure there's no cracks on the dropout. They have to split like right here where they meet, or sometimes even a little bit back where the tube meets the dropout. Really just give it a look over. I'll probably wipe it down and clean it. But we're also going to do one other thing, which I haven't done a video on yet. We're going to do a basic frame alignment check. We call this the string test or string alignment. This is actually just a wire with an alligator clip on it, but you can use just any old piece of string, anything you want. I'm going to wrap it around the head tube. I guess instead of going through the dropouts, it'll come up over around the eyelet. It'll come all the way around the back. So came around the back and tied it here, but you can tie it a knot anywhere. You just want to get this string kind of as taut as possible. You can push it up here a little bit more. Oh yeah, slide that up, makes it a little tighter. And this is going to let us know if this frame is all whacked and out of alignment. So what we're going to do is measure off the tube to the string on both sides. I just have like a little teeny ruler, a little hard ruler. You can use a measuring tape if you're careful. I'm just going to touch this tube and hold it up to this string. And it looks like we're at the top, it's easy to read, 35 millimeters. Let's do this side. This side looks like it's exactly 35 millimeters as well. So here you can just see I have the string around the eyelets. On track ends or horizontal things, you can just put it right through the dropouts themselves where the axle is. This is probably pretty close. The string just runs all the way along the frame. Touch and measure off the seat tube, wraps up and around the head tube. So in theory, it's the same distance all the way down. And this is how we can measure. Just boop, right against the tube, right up onto the ruler, 35 millimeters. So that's really good news. It means the whole frame is not all bent over from a wreck. You can check this rear spacing as well while we're at it. Make sure this is spaced correctly. It's not all pinched in or weird. I'm getting right at 130, which for a vintage mountain bike is pretty normal for the 80s. Some more modern mountain bikes from like the 90s and 2000s are 135. Disc stuff's all 135. This is nice because you use an old road hub or an old vintage mountain bike hub like a Dior LX or DX. So here's a little bit of damage. The little chain hanger is like a nail and it's just sort of bent down. We probably straighten it, or we can just leave it there. The chain will still hang on it. It's not going to cause any problem if we try and straighten it, it might break. Oh, we want to do an alignment check. So a good way of doing an alignment check for the front of the triangle, if we did this, it's probably fine, is to eyeball this tube with the head tube. A good way of doing that is holding the bike up into the sun or into a light source. So you can see, you can move the bike left and right until those two tubes line up. And then you can see the crack of daylight in between them. Just move it just out. So that crack of daylight's pretty even. Frame's probably aligned. If the crack of daylight's, a millimeter at the top and a centimeter at the bottom, it means that head tube is twisted or the seat tube's twisted. I'm gonna pop. little string tester off. So I do have a light right here on the ceiling. And so I'm going to try and do this little test. Just going to twist the frame until I can see the head tube line up with the seat tube. Looks pretty even. I don't remember if it's better this way or not. I think it's better the other way. And this way is better because you get a lot of head tube. So I've got the frame straight on. I'm just going to move it until the head tube passes the seat tube. Honestly, I'd like a little more light. It's pretty close. It almost looks like it might be a little bit off, but honestly most frames are, and most people's eyes aren't good enough to tell. And while I'm at it, another really important place to check on frames is right here, right along the bottom. Frames, people run into curbs and they frontal bikes, so they bend the entire frame a little bit and push the fork back. I usually use a bigger ruler, but just for this video, I'm going to use this little one. So you can run a little ruler along the bottom and see if it, goes ting, 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 because there's a high spot of ripple. And if it's really bad, you'll see an actual ripple, like it's bent and makes a bubble. So on this bike, it is perfectly, totally flat. You can also check the old top tube, and it's more or less flat. Not enough to really notice or care. You can eyeball forks too and see if their blades look pushed back. Usually happens right at the crown or right below the crown. So if you use a yardstick or a ruler, you can run an imaginary line through the steer tube. And it should be a nice straight blade all the way through the steer tube and all the way through the blade till it starts bending. So if it's all pushed back, you see any ripples, it means the fork's been wrecked and is really not safe to use. So yeah, we're not finding any cracks. Used to have a kickstand on it, so it's got a little bit of paint damage from the kickstand. Like on the last bike, on the poor Nishiki, it died because the wheel was put in crooked and was probably out of true, so the tire was always rubbing the inside stay and literally hacksawed through it. This one has a little bit of paint damage missing on this side, probably from the wheel being slightly out of true and the tire's barely hitting here once in a while, or getting mud caught in it and just the mud and rocks hitting. But if you run your finger on it, you don't actually feel any gouges or cracks. It's really smooth. Otherwise, you'd almost like this stays indented, you'd be able to feel like a gouge, like a line. So this frame is totally nice. I don't know if I pointed out before the Tange mountain bike double butted tubes. So it's got, Tange mountain tubes were just absolutely legendary in the 80s and 90s. So it's got really, really good tubes and no damage at all except for that poor steer tube. And barely any paint chips. It's really a shame about that fork because this frame's pretty cool. Alright, thanks for watching.